Welcome back. You're watching Wake Up WA. Now, Gary Warden joins us now from the Climate Change Coalition. Welcome to the program, Gary.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Got here on time with the daylight savings and all?
I did.
Now, something that grabbed my ears while we were in the dressing room before, you were recently quite sceptical about the climate change that's going on at the moment. What's recently changed your views on that, and why have you all of a sudden changed your ideas on what's happening with the climate?
Yeah, it must seem quite strange having someone sitting here representing the Climate Change Coalition, and I was actually quite sceptical about climate change up until about 18 months ago. And I'm a geologist by training, and I studied climate change science when I went to university, albeit almost 30 years ago now. And I always remember arguing with my wife about climate change, and she used to beat me up about it and say, get on board, this is happening. And I said, look, I studied this at university, I know all about it. You know, I'm right, you're wrong. And but I never really made the effort to go out there and educate myself about the more recent scientific findings that were coming out. And as a geologist, I knew we were coming out of an ice age 10,000 years ago. The Earth was warming, and so I wasn't alarmed by reports about the warming trends.
But if you'd studied it, couldn't you see these things coming?
Absolutely. That is certainly true. And the big issue for me was I was working within the resources industry. I worked for 18 years with BHP Billiton, the world's largest resource company, gradually working my way up the ranks, working around the world. And there's a classic quote in Al Gore's film An Inconvenient Truth, which is, it's very difficult to get a man to understand something if his salary depends on him not understanding it. And I think I well and truly fell into that category. My salary depended on me not really taking on board climate change. And so it wasn't really until about 18 months ago I was actually sitting in a doctor's surgery in Shetland Park. And it was quite fortunate for a number of reasons. Firstly, there was a Time magazine article sitting on the table there, and hopefully we got some footage of that. But it was a classic image of a polar bear sitting on a rapidly diminishing iceberg. And the title of the magazine was "Be Worried, Be Very Worried." There's the footage there. And so the other fortunate thing about that day was the doctor was running late, and so I actually had enough time to read a couple of articles about climate change, and it was the first time in really almost 30 years that I'd actually educated myself about climate change. And some of the things I read in there were really truly alarming. Just the fact that the carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere were higher than any other stage in 650,000 years, record levels of melting of the polar ice caps of the glaciers in Greenland, increasing intensities of cyclones and hurricanes. And it really got me on board, and I walked away from the doctor's surgery that way a completely changed man, and it wasn't because of anything that the doctor did. And so my wife and I really started making changes in our personal lives. We sold our big four-wheel drive, bought a Prius. We started growing our own veggies to reduce our environmental footprint. We changed all our incandescent light bulbs with compact fluorescents, and so we really started getting on board at a personal level.
And you mentioned in there that the quote from Al Gore's movie An Inconvenient Truth, you now take that message and share it with other people, is that right? Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Well, I was very fortunate to have been selected to go across to do some training in Melbourne last month, and the training was led by Al Gore, and the intent of the training was to train up people to go out and spread his climate change message across Australia, and he's also training people up in the United States and progressively to other countries. So, and his slideshow forms the basis of his film, which a lot of people would have seen, An Inconvenient Truth, and it really sells the climate change science, but also tells the story in a very graphical way. There's lots of photos in the slideshow around the glacial melts right around the world, around the hurricanes and the cyclones and the bushfires, the droughts. Very graphical depiction of what climate change is actually doing. So the slideshow tells the story about climate change, but importantly it also focuses on what can actually be done by individuals, by communities, by corporations to actually really combat climate change.
Fantastic. What a life experience also.
Absolutely. And so those presentations are free, I presume, is that right?
They are, yes, and I've made a commitment to Mr Gore to deliver at least 10 of those presentations over the course of the next 12 months, and I have a personal goal to do many more than that. I'm aiming for about 100. There's some presentations going on next week. I'll be travelling through the southwest in Busselton and Albany, but we've got seminars coming up throughout the metropolitan area as well and other regional areas. We'll be advertising in local papers, but you can also go to my blog, which is shown on screen there, to find out where I'll be at different dates over the coming months.
So we'll put that, if you missed that link there, because it was quite a long link, go to our website, www.wakeupwa.com, and we'll put a link to Gary's website there where you can find about the free presentations.
Now, Gary, you're here today representing the Climate Change Coalition. What's it like being a part of that?
Well, it's a very new experience for me. I only came on board with the Climate Change Coalition about 3 weeks ago, and it's very much a fledgling party. It only formed in New South Wales last year for the state election there. They're now running candidates in New South Wales, Queensland, South Australia, and also now in Western Australia. You know, it's a different sort of party. It doesn't have political roots. It's a group of people who have come from very diverse backgrounds. People like our leader Patrice Newell, who's a farmer, but in a previous life was a broadcaster, and also prior to that was a model. People would probably know Dr. Karl Kruszelnicki, who's in the media. He's the guy who wears the loud shirts, and who also is able to bring science to the masses. And so he's running as a Senate candidate in New South Wales as well. So a very diverse range of backgrounds, but we're all united around a common passion around combating climate change.
In my introduction earlier today, Gary, I mentioned that that this is such a big issue that the major parties, the Coalition and Labor, are basically making a lot of noise about it.
Absolutely.
And we've had the Greens doing it for quite some time. How does the Climate Change Coalition differentiate itself from some of those parties? Why should we look at more of your policies?
Absolutely, and it's an excellent question. If I can talk about the major parties, the two major parties, first of all, I think they have a lot. You mentioned there's a lot of words that they're using, and that's all it is really. If you look at their level of commitment in terms of spending on climate change, actually there's not much to support the words that they're saying. Kevin Rudd's been quoted as saying climate change is one of the biggest challenges of our generation, but if you look at how much spending they're dedicated to that, it's actually not very much. Neither party is prepared to commit to any reductions targets for 2020 or even earlier than that. I don't believe that anybody's serious about climate change unless they're willing to commit to targets for the term of government, and neither of the major political parties are prepared to do that. In terms of the Greens, there's absolutely no doubt that they've been waging a lone battle on the climate change front really for many years, at least at a political level, and I salute them, I guess, for the work that they've been doing there. A lot of people I've spoken to, though, while they're concerned about climate change and they are disaffected with the Liberal Party and the Labor Party, they're not prepared to vote for the Greens. Now, I don't necessarily agree with their reasons for doing that, but I do believe that those people do need a voice in the Senate at a federal level, and so that's the reason why I felt there's an opportunity here with the Climate Change Coalition to give those people a voice.
Well, for people to find out more, if they want to hear more, we've got to cut you short. But if people do want to get in touch with you, possibly go to one of your Al Gore speeches.
Absolutely. Where
can they find information, just very quickly again?
Well, quickly they can go to our website, which is www.climatechangecoalition.com.au. I'm happy for people to phone me. You've got my details there. I've also got an excellent blog site if people are getting depressed about climate change. There's some good, funny videos out there on YouTube. So if you go to my blog, which is shown there, you can have a few laughs about climate change as well.
Gary, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for coming in this morning.
My pleasure.
And if you did miss any of his details, get onto our site, wakeupwa.com. We're going to cross to the news with Anita now.